What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. As you can see, we are unfortunately down a man tonight. Christian had to do some schoolwork, so it's me and Reuben out here two-man gaming it again. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing all right, my guy. Just got home from a long day, man. But I'm excited about the final starting this week.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's what it's about, man. It's what it's
Yes,
about.
sir. It's crazy, man. We went from literally like how many games? Like I think. Okay, if we do the math real quick, 82 times 30. There are literally over 2,400 games that were played this season. And now we have at least four and at most seven until one, the 2022 NBA season comes to a hold, and two, we're going to see if the Celtics are going to retake their crown as the team with the most titles, or if the Warriors are going to showcase that the dynasty is not over. But I mean, first of all, I think first thing that we need to talk about is that looking back, Ruben, did you see either of these teams coming up in the finals?
I didn't have okay. I did say I tweeted it actually before the playoffs, saying I think Boston has a real chance at making the finals, and Golden State is actually my. I actually bet on them to win the NBA championship at the very beginning of the season. So yeah, I've got Golden State winning the title since the very beginning, so I'm not shocked about that. Um, but with Boston, I didn't really feel like it was real that they could make the NBA Finals until they actually beat Milwaukee. Because I thought that you and I were obviously both on the same side here. We're saying Milwaukee was going to clean them in about 6 games, and then we saw an opposite result. So yeah, I don't know. How did you feel about this matchup? Like, did you have the same thing?
Uh, I definitely did see Golden State coming out just because, I think with Phoenix, here's the thing. I feel that every NBA championship run has like some kind of adversity throughout the entire season. And what you saw with Phoenix was that, relatively speaking, they ran through everybody in the regular season. I mean, if you
Yeah.
attribute all the games they lost, a big good majority of those are probably when like Chris Paul or Devin Booker's out. And even in the playoffs last year, they relatively ran through everybody, I feel. But when you look at Golden State, I don't think you'd be hard pressed to find another team I think that's been through more than they have in the past 2 years. Because arguably, you know, obviously health is a factor. I'm not saying that that's the sole reason, but a big chunk of the reason I think they missed out on two potential finals appearances, obviously because you're missing Clay and Steph that 1 year. And looking at this year, seeing how they were able to play all together and seeing that continuity finally being back, I definitely saw them coming into the finals. I think it was between them and Phoenix, and obviously the team with the most experience like won out, and now we're here. But when it came to Boston, I'm not gonna say I was like completely down on them during the beginning of the season, but I think it was very uncharacteristic of them because I thought they were definitely going to be kind of solid throughout the entire season. That wasn't the case in the first half, but here's a little hot take. I think if they are to win, or even if they don't win, just the fact that they're in the finals, I don't think I don't think it's crazy to say that this is one of the best, if not the best season turnarounds we've ever seen. Because there were at times they were under 500, and
They were
like
11th at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, they were like way down there.
Yeah,
And
people don't talk about that enough now because we're obviously so in awe of how well their defense has been. They obviously have the best defense in the league right now. Jason Tatum, who's a budding star, Jalen Brown, Emi Udoka is getting a lot of love. Marcus
mm,
Smart, Defensive Player of the Year. And then you saw the resurgence of Al Horford, their veteran, and then a guy like Robert Williams who's come into his own. Like the individual stories and obviously their finals run has kind of overshadowed, for a good reason, overshadowed like the fact that they were such a bad team at the beginning of the year. And it was just like I feel like that's one of the most beautiful, not beautiful, I guess like one of the best stories, just the best redemption arcs from being a team that was like Well, the Celtics are trash, and everybody was talking about splitting up the two Jalen's or splitting up the two J's, right? And then all of a sudden they're in the NBA Finals, and people are looking at it like, oh yeah, okay, we're actually idiots. Like if they split them up, what would have happened, right? Or like, and then obviously they made that dope trade at the deadline, getting Derek White. Like we don't talk enough about how bad this team was, and then I think Emi Udoka deserves a lot of credit for that, and
100%. Yeah.
obviously their leaders too. Like Marcus Smart really turned it up. Like at least on defensively and then offensively, he just said, "I'm going to take the playmaking reins and make sure that these guys are in their spots." And remember, people were talking about how Jason Tatum was such a ball hog too, and then he couldn't work with Jalen
Yeah.
Brown.
And now he's averaging what, 29, 7, and 7 right now in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Insane.
they're a well-oiled machine now, and I don't think I've ever seen such a quick turnaround because they were 12th, and that was a good chunk of the first quarter of the season too. So yeah, I think what your hot take is, I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I think it's pretty valid. And with that being said, let's hop into some superlatives. Reuben, who would you say is the biggest X factor on both teams? Let's start. Well, since we are West Coast boys, we'll start with the West. So, who would you say is the X factor on Golden State?
Draymond. Draymond only because of the fact that teams are going to game plan for um, Steph, Clay. We've already seen that Jordan Poole has emerged and Andrew Wiggins. There's so many weapons that they have on the floor that it's almost like you kind of have to pick your poison. You know that phrase, right? Where you have to pick your poison. What are you going to choose? Are you going to double Steph? Are you gonna play single man? Are you gonna match up? Are you gonna overhelp? Are you gonna do those type of things? With Draymond, he is obviously the one guy that you look on the offense. If he's on the court on the offensive end, you're gonna be like, okay, I'm willing to give this guy whatever he wants offensively. So we'll give him the space. So I think I hope he backs up his phrase that or the statement he made against Dallas, and that was, "I shoot when it matters," right? So he's got to do that. He's got to be able to take those open shots. He's got to be able to look, because oftentimes when he's in those those DHOs and those screen and rolls with Steph and Clay and Jordan Poole, oftentimes he finds himself in the middle and he's looking for the next pass out. When in turn he can just kind of turn and flip that thing up, right? Or just get to the rim, draw a foul. Um, and he's actually a pretty solid finisher. Like Draymond's a good finisher around the rim, and I think he's gonna have some. He's gonna have some matchup advantages too because he is a more agile and mobile guy. Than a Grant Williams or than a Robert Williams or a Daniel Tice or an Al Horford, right? So at least in terms of that department, I think he's going to be the X factor. So if all five guys on the court can be offensive threats, then that makes the Celtics defense a lot weaker in terms of what they do. And you know, again, you have to pick your poison on that end. So yeah, that's who I think my X factor is.
Draymond's definitely a solid choice. I think for me, I'm gonna have to go with Captain Canada. I think Andrew Wiggins is definitely the X factor in that.
That would have been my second
Obviously,
choice.
yeah, from the offensive standpoint, he's playing super solid. I think out of every player, he's the one I don't think has really had any crazy stinkers like the 1 for 12 kind of shooting nights. He's been super solid, and not only that, uh, I think outside of Draymond, he's probably going to be their second most important player on the defensive end, just from the fact that when you look at like his length and his size, I think he matches up best against the two Jays. I
Yeah.
definitely expect him to always be glued to either Jason Tatum or Jalen Brown heading forward. And another player, I think, if he's able to like show up, and I do think he will. I think Gary Payton II definitely has a chance to, really put his stamp on the series and kind of just complete this, this training slash redemption arc he's been on this whole year. When, I mean, he's said it himself a bunch. Like, if it didn't work out with the Warriors, he was about to ask for like a video coordinator job, and now
Mhm.
he has a chance to be the primary or the second primary defender on a potentially championship winning team. Or, for all we know, Andre Iguodala is going to come back and play MVP level basketball and win Finals MVP because he held Jason Tatum to 25 points per game.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The Warriors have a lot of weapons. Like there. Obviously, everyone hopes that Steph can win the Finals MVP, right? Like,
Mm.
obviously, we'll talk about that after. That's the next one. But like the thing about X factors, especially in this one, is like both teams are so deep that it's almost like the X factor literally could be the Finals MVP, right? Like if they're that big of a difference maker, because everyone knows, like, okay, like we're gonna game plan for Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. Those four guys are gonna get game plan for. So it's a matter of who's gonna be the next guy up for each team, and whoever probably has the best performances. I mean, that's part of the reason why Steph has always struggled in the playoffs, right? Like he doesn't have those huge nights typically, as he does in the season, because teams tend to they blow up the coverages against him, and they overplay him, and so it's always been about like the others, and that's why Andre Iguodala and Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson have received all the love they have over the years because of the fact that they're able to step up when Steph is just like all the attention, all the aggro's on him.
No doubt. No doubt. All right. Yeah, I think even looking at a guy like Moses Moody, who was able to come in last series and
Yeah.
put his stamps here and there. But switching gears, who would you say are the X factors for the Celtics?
For me, I have it as Al Horford.
Hmm.
Only because I think that he'll be able to dominate the size advantage. Like the size advantage is obviously on his end, and I think he's probably the most important piece to what they do defensively because he's been a really good anchor, especially with Robert Williams being so inconsistent with the injuries all throughout the playoffs. And if I'm not mistaken, there's been some games where it's almost like Robert Williams is a bit unplayable in some of the games.
Yeah,
Uh,
you can tell he's still feeling a bit of like, I mean, the dude fucking tore his ACL or PCL or
yeah,
whatever it was. I think
yeah,
it's insane to even see that he's on the floor.
yeah, exactly. So for me, it's definitely Hal Orford only because of the fact that that's where their advantage is going to come from right off the bat. Everyone knows, oh shit, sorry, whoops, something was about to fall, so I was just trying to save it while I was in the middle of talking. My bad. Yeah, the size advantage is going to be a huge portion unless Kevon Looney has like that one game times 4 to 7, which is probably not going to happen. But I like their chances Al Horford can dominate at least his end, so that every game by game basis, unless they're going to be playing zone and closing the paint against the Golden State Warriors, which I don't think anybody would ever do. Uh, Al Horford already has a size advantage, and I think he's going to be their most important player because look at it this way too: the matchups like that Golden State can throw at a Jason Tatum, a Jalen Brown, and then the guards that they can throw against the Celtics backcourt, which is Derek White, Marcus Smart, and Peyton Pritchard. Those guys are really important to them. But if you're talking about on the perimeter, they match up really well against each other, right? There's a lot of things that they can negate. At least with Al Horford, he's a former All Star. Unless Draymond's guarding him straight up, the entire series and every game and every possession. Again, he still has a size advantage and a skill advantage over a lot of these players, right? Or a lot of the defensive matchups, the potential defensive matchups in this series. So I think he'll be really important, and I think it was between him and Marcus, or sorry, not Marcus Smart, Derek White for me, because I think like Derek White is an important piece, and obviously they got him during the trade deadline. But again, it's been talked about all season long how Golden State hasn't really had consistent play down low, and the Celtics have a really good big rotation between Robert Williams, Al Horford, Grant Williams, and Tice. If he does get any time as a stringer, but yeah, man, I think Al Horford is going to be the X factor to this series, at least for the Celtics. If he dominates his his position like he's supposed to, I think they've got a really good chance.
Man, we are completely simpatico right now, brother, because I was thinking it's out between Al Horford and Derek White too. I mean, here's my little love for Al Horford. There have been multiple times where he's like the number two option or like the number two guy out like throughout like each and every of the series they've played. And in addition to that, I think the fact that he is like their veteran and the fact that obviously he's on the wrong side of 30, he's going to be playing with so much motivation that I don't think it's crazy to see more of those nights where he's the number two guy. But to kind of defer from that, yeah, I think Derek White really has a chance to put another stamp on this series just because, when it comes to stopping Golden State, so much of their offense and like literally the bulk of it, aside from maybe Draymond and when Wiggins does get shots, is in their backcourt. And when it comes to like defending their backcourt, Marcus Smart is going to have a field day. He's obviously going to be attached to Curry at the hip. But I think with that, that gives a chance for Derek White to step in and really like put his stamp on the series, especially, when we look at each team's bench, you see a Jordan Poole, a guy who's very like, who's had these like 30 plus point games throughout the playoffs. And you look at a Derek White, obviously he's not going to jump out with like those crazy numbers, but coming from like that San Antonio system, if there's one thing he knows how to play, it's fucking defense. And I think he's going to have a really good series, and I'll definitely look for him. Like, I don't think he's going to average crazy stats, but it's going to be a bunch of those things where you don't see it on the box score, whether it be, contesting shots, being able to like force the next miss kind of thing. Derek White, I think, has a really big chance to be another great contributor and another one of those players when you look back at Celtics history where it might not be the Larry Birds of the world, but when you look back at like a championship, this dude definitely has to be mentioned in that. But coming from there, from the X factors, let's talk about who do you have as Finals MVP if obviously the Warriors win and if the Celtics win. Let's just do both all in one.
Yeah, for me, I think it's pretty easy. I'm gonna go Steph for the Warriors because obviously the storyline is all there. He needs it, legacy wise. He needs it. And then for the Celtics, am I crazy to say Jaylen Brown?
Hey, bro, that's your opinion. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
You know why I don't think it's crazy to say Jaylen Brown? Only because I know how well they're obviously going to give it to Jason Tatum. I feel because he's going to perform really well, and he's shown throughout the playoffs. Like the dude, it just plays at a whole different level when the lights are on. So obviously there's no surprise, but I don't. The reason why I want to say Jaylen Brown is because of the fact that I think Golden, or at least in the media, and I could be wrong when it actually heads to the court. Excuse me, when it heads to the court, is the focus has been about the defensive matchups on Jason Tatum. Oh, we're gonna throw Wiggins on him. Oh, we're gonna show him a lot of different looks. Draymond's gonna get some time on him. Clay's gonna be there. If they're so fixated, let's say if the media is correct from what we've been listening to, if the media is correct, if they're so fixated on the matchup that they have against Jason Tatum to slow him down, you do guys realize that there is another all-star wing right beside him in Jaylen Brown, right? He's very capable of going off for 30 any night and create his own shot any other way, and who's also no slouch on the defensive end. So that's why I loved this pairing, and I said from the very beginning to one of my titos, who's a freaking huge Celtics fan, and he talks about how much he brags of how great the Celtics were back in the day, and then the Celtics team. It's like, man, we should get rid of Jason Tatum. We should trade him. We should trade Jaylen Brown. We should trade these guys. And I said, listen. I said, Tito, this is what I told them. If you trade one of them, you guys are the dumbest franchise in history. And look what happened. They kept him, and now they're in the finals. And Jason Tatum only works so well because he's got that partner, and vice versa, right? Like, these two guys just play so well together now because they understand, okay, this is Tatum's team. He's going to get the first look. He's going to get more touches. But when you have an all-star wing who creates shots and also demand that kind of attention, when both of them are on, it's dangerous, right? And I think if they're so fixated on that defensive match against Tatum, all the attention's going to be towards them. You guys do, there's a very big possibility that Jaylen Brown could have an awesome series, especially if the attention isn't going to be so fixated on him as opposed to, what the attention that Jason Tatum is going to get throughout the series.
I respect that. No, that's totally valid. I think Jaylen Brown on basically I think any other team is your number one option. Obviously outside of like say Brooklyn or Milwaukee. For me, I'm gonna go a little off the radar here. So I think, and in my heart, that this one's for my mom. I want Klay Thompson to win MVP, man. I think while Curry has somewhat of the narrative in that he's literally won everything under the sun outside of Finals MVP, there isn't a player in recent NBA history who's been through as much struggle in terms of like coming from the top of the mountain to literally missing two and a half seasons of basketball. Klay Thompson is a guy who's really looked like a changed man across this entire playoff run. He always talks about this newfound perspective he has for like the game that he loves, and he hasn't been able to like practice and even play with to that love over these past couple of years. And much like you say, a lot of the matchups are going to be predicated on stopping Curry. People forget this is a man who has the most 3 points in a single game. And this is also a man that dropped 60 points on 11 dribbles. And this is a man that shows up in game 6. And this is a man who had probably the coldest Instagram story in a minute. You see that? The Jackson Tyson game 6 Klay, baby. No, but to wrap that up in a little quick, neat little bow, I think outside of Al Horford, I think the person or the player that's going to be playing with the most fire and the most kind of will to win is definitely Klay Thompson. Because this is just kind of the revenge tour on his Achilles and his knee kind of thing. And I expect the dude to really play his ass off. I expect him to have multiple 20-point games, and I expect him to, really showcase what the Warriors could have been in those past 2 years would he have been there. Now, when it comes to the Celtics, if they do win, I think majority of the reason they do win is in their ability to limit Steph. And with that, I don't think it's crazy to think Marcus Smart has the potential to win Finals MVP. We look at a lot of these close games and a lot of these Game 7 for instance. He had 20. He had 20 plus. Right up there with Jason and Jaylen. And even looking at his numbers now, he's averaging about 16 and 6. On top of a steal and all that stuff. And not only that, when you look at the kind of the three guys who tend to handle the ball in Tatum, Brown, and Smart, he's averaging the least amount of turnovers. And yeah, I just think if the Celtics do win, again, a lot of that is predicated on the fact that they're able to limit Steph and really, have him have another subpar finals. And much like how Andre Iguodala won for limiting LeBron from 30 to 27 points or whatever the difference was. Who's to say the same shit can't happen with Marcus Smart?
Can we? That was 30, 15, and 11 or something like that. LeBron was generational. LeBron was generational, and they gave that thing to Andre Iguodala for slowing him down. Slowing him down from what? The dude averaged double the finals, dog. What are you even talking about here?
It was probably he got his 30 off of 17 shots instead of 15.
Okay, yeah, that's probably what it was, man. I can't. Whatever. Andre Iguodala did not deserve that thing.
Yeah, Marcus Smart's gonna win Finals MVP because he put the fucking claps on Stephen Curry. Or we could both be wrong and Jason Tatum averages 40 plus. Who knows?
Or Steph Curry, Marcus Smart will slow down Steph Curry to a mere 40 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds on 50% shooting from 3. Like, yeah, he definitely slowed him down. That's why we gave it to him.
That's why we gave it. Hey, crazier shit has happened.
Clearly.
The guy who won the scoring title and was second MVP voting was second team All NBA this year. But we talked about that last week. Anyways, another question. What would you say a championship does for each team's legacy? I think let's start with the Celtics. Like in my opinion, I think it pushes them back into that echelon of that they're the best NBA franchise of all time. Because I mean, this would be what, banner 18, I believe. Even though obviously majority of those banners were when there were only 2 rounds, but shit talking aside.
Playing fireman?
Yeah. Yeah, fuck man. But when we look at like Boston, particularly the Celtics, I think across every major sport outside of maybe soccer, which I don't really count soccer because it doesn't have that same sort of team building exercise where you're limited by a cap. Now, when we look at the 5 major sports outside of that, there's no team that has a record of dominance throughout multiple eras, I think, as much as the Celtics do, or as much as a pedigree and as much as remaining relevant as much as the Celtics do. Because when you look at the beginning of the NBA, as we talked about earlier, obviously you have the Celtics. When you look more to the 70s and the 80s, that's when you see Larry Bird, coldest white boy to ever pick up a ball. You know, little bit of a drop in like the late 90s, early 2000s, but when you look at the last time they were in the finals, one of the coldest teams ever assembled. And now when you look now, even like without the finals appearance, I saw a stat. I think it's the Philadelphia 76ers as a franchise have, I think, 32 playoff games since. It was either since 2000, including the finals run, or after the finals run. And Jason Tatum by himself has more than that. I think if that doesn't speak to the consistency and the excellence that the Celtics exude, I don't know what else does. So I think it just pushes them back into that upper echelon of not only the greatest NBA franchises, but the greatest sports franchises.
Yeah, there's nothing else for me to add. I think it's you can argue and say like so chips weren't even on television. You know, you can say stupid stuff like that, but at the end of the day, the franchise has been around for whatsoever many years. They've had some of the greatest players of all time come through the Celtics. And you know what? I think like what this does for the legacy of this franchise, or at least like the narrative right after, at least is, um, I mean, I'm gonna go off the board a little bit. The narrative for what this franchise is: Brad Stevens wasn't really that great of a coach. Emi Udoka was awesome considering the turnaround that he had at the beginning of the year. Maybe Brad Stevens is better as an executive, right? And Jason Tatum is a real thing. And Jason Tatum might go down as a generational player. And what it means for the Celtics franchise is once again they're back on the mountaintop, which they've almost been always at nearly every decade of every decade in the NBA. So I think that's and nothing else for me to add other than I mean it just cements one of the greatest teams, if not the greatest team of all time in history.
Yes. A legacy that was built by Dominique Wilkins in the 1994 and the 1995 season. When he averaged... Oh, he actually had a pretty solid season with him. Alright, that being said...
Forget that, man.
Yeah, bro. Dominique Wilkins was cold as fuck on the Boston Celtics. I don't know who else he played for, but when Dominique was on the Celtics... But... With that being said, Reuben, since I took the reins on the Boston side of things, what would you say a championship does for the Golden State Warriors side of things?
Well, that would be, if I'm not mistaken, 4 championships, right? The last
Yes.
4 championships in the last 7 years.
7, 8 years. Yep.
Like that's one of the most dominant runs in NBA history. And I think if they win this championship, number one, it cements a lot of the individual legacies for Clay and Steph. They didn't need Kevin Durant to win these titles. They did it before that, and if they can do it after him, that kind of just that comes full circle, right? The narrative comes full circle. The other part is I think the Golden State Warriors will go down as the best youngest franchise in NBA history, because that franchise hasn't been around for that long. Um, but they've had such success over the last decade. Like they've been in the playoffs, they've been to the final 6 out of the last 8 appearances. Like, and I just want to say again another side-handed compliment for LeBron James. That dude made 9 straight finals. LeBron made 9 straight finals. For a team to do that, we talk about how difficult that is. Make 6 out of the last 8 finals. That's so difficult. They've gone through so much. Jesus Christ, LeBron James went through 9 straight finals alone. Well, not alone, but obviously 9 straight finals between Cleveland and Miami. Like that's insane. But anyways, like Golden State cements a lot of the individual legacies. Steve Kerr goes down as one of the best coaches. He already has gone down as one of the best coaches. Steph Curry might go down as one of the most impactful. You could even make the argument to say if he wins this chip as the most influential player in NBA history because he completely changed how a game is played, right? And he continues to find success. And he's obviously the greatest shooter of all time. Golden State Warriors as a franchise can go down as one of the greatest youngest franchises births ever. One of the greatest front offices, just organizationally from top to bottom, one of the best. And then what it means moving forward for them is they built a program where Draymond Green said this a lot on his podcast over the last few weeks is it's been so difficult or you rarely ever see a team with a full combination of young guys and old guys. It's typically your team is super young or your team is just a shitload of veterans on your team. This might be actually one of the first teams where it's like, yeah, the majority of guys are pretty young, right? And then you still have your main core guys between Steph, Clay, and Dre, and Andre, but he's barely played. Everybody else is young as F. Everybody else has really limited experience in the playoffs or in the NBA at all. And so the fact that they were able to accomplish that with that kind of mixed group of guys shows that this team can also develop within, internally. And so that puts their stamp as, we talk about how good Miami's program is, how good Toronto is, the San Antonio Spurs are as a development program. That cements them because if they're able to win with this group of guys like no other franchise has, or at least from what I can remember, then moving forward you can say, all right, then Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Kevon Looney, James Wiseman, these guys are all, Jordan Poole, these guys are all going to do that in the next couple of years when Steph, Clay, and Dre are gone. So having that kind of confidence in your program and that success to speak for that leads to a lot of long-term, like a lot of longevity for this franchise in terms of success. So I think there's I basically a long-winded answer to say it cements Golden State as one of the greatest programs ever. Also,
I like the word program. For me, I think one of the things I have to add is Otto Porter has the chance to avenge his 1959 NBA Finals loss, baby. No, but yeah, I think you put that together beautifully. Yeah, when you look at Golden State, I don't think there's a team that's been able to establish as much of a winning but also still loose and fun culture as much as Golden State has. I mean, when you look at the foundation, I think the We Believe is really the first thing I think of when you kind of try to pinpoint
yeah,
the beginning of this like rise that the Warriors would have. That sort of underdog mentality that's been instilled in the fabric of that franchise. And now you see how they've risen to the top, come back down, and now they're on the precipice of being at the top again. And shoot, I think it definitely submitted. If it didn't already, what it would do, I think, is number one, make it even more stupid that Clay and Draymond weren't on the top 75.
Yeah.
Yeah. And two, I 100% agree when you look at the modern NBA or like the modern NBA because they like to call the modern NBA like the shot clock era, but whatever. When we look at how basketball is played, like even 50 plus years from now, you know, the Magic Johnsons of the world, Michael Jordans, those are going to be, not that they won't be relevant, but you'd be hard pressed to find any person that's under 30 that would say Steph Curry didn't do as much for the game as those guys did. When we look at the way basketball is played now, Steph Curry is 100% the main reason why it is played the way it is played today. But yeah, shoot. Program, I think, is the perfect word because, I mean, as much as it's been about the big three and what they've been able to do, just top to bottom, A1.
Do you think this sets? So I think Boston making it to the finals is good. Like whether or not they win is honestly it's been a successful year. But let me know what you think about if Golden State loses, this sets their program back. At least during this core time with Clay, Trey, and Steph, because in my opinion, I think it closes their window if they can't win now.
I wouldn't say it closes their window, but I will say the sense of urgency is much higher than it already is because, I mean, Steph's what, 33, 34, Clay's 31, 32, Draymond's heading into like his age 33 season. So I'm not going to say it's completely like closed, but that bitch is starting to creep close, I will say.
Yeah.
And even looking to next year, even though I don't really want to look past the finals, if they get back a guy like James Wiseman, even if he's playing like mediocre, just the fact that they'll have that size again will be like a super big plus.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's crazy how they can literally they're able to address that need internally, and it's been long. It's just maybe they just decided not to play him this year and just to watch his health, considering he's such a cornerstone piece. But you
yeah,
know what
I
I mean?
think he probably could have gone this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was planning. They were planning on him. Well, because we all had him during fantasy. You know, had him hiding on the
On
IL.
the
He's
Honey's,
supposed
yeah.
to come back in January, and I think they just precautionary were like, you know what, we're such a good team this year, we might not need you. And I think that's a very honest thing that they did, and to obviously make sure that the kid is healthy. But you know,
No
they
doubt.
invested the way they played this year, and hopefully the sense of it. For me personally, I think I'd love to. We'll probably obviously talk about it, but I'd love to see Golden State win another chip, and then kind of close that window in a sense. And then at this point, it's kind of just playing with house money. You know.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, I don't think there's a team in here that you could actively say you're rooting against, unless you're like your Tito and you're a diehard Celtics fan.
Yeah.
Both these teams have the narrative on their sides, and both these teams have very likable rosters. And yeah, I mean,
How do you think this ends?
that's what we're gonna get into. So, I think let's not only give our pick for the games, but kind of how you think it's gonna happen. For me, obviously, I want it to go in 7, but you know, here's why I think it might not. So, I think both teams take care of home court. You know, 2-2 heading into Game 5. From there, at the Chase Center, Draymond Green drops 50. Nah, but I do think, when it comes to home court advantages, these two are like kind of the creme de la creme. That being said, the Chase Center is going to be rocking in Game 5. And when it comes to Game 6, you know what time it is. There's Jackson, Tyson, Jordan. Game 6. So, I do think... You know what? Fuck it. Golden State at 6, man. Golden State at 6. I think I'll lock that in. I think it'll go 2-2. Then Golden State will win the next two. With the Game 5 being that pivotal one in the Chase Center. And then going back to Boston, Klay Thompson is going to silence the Garden. that his father once tried to have an impact in, but I believe they lost when he was on the Lakers.
Yeah, yeah, Warriors in 6 for me too. I think they just got too much experience, too many weapons, too many. They pose too many matchup problems, and yeah, sometimes you just have to give it up to experience as well. Yeah, it's hard to it's really hard to bet against Steph, Clay, and Dre, man. It's really hard considering how they were able to stay afloat throughout the season when they had all those injuries. I mean, they came in as they're coming in as a third seed, man, and they came in playing super bad basketball into the playoffs, and then they flipped the switch. And again, remember that was one of the phrases that was used for this team over the last couple of years before now is that, like Golden State is the team that can flip the switch just like this. Boston's going to be on it all the time. Golden State can be that team that flips the switch, especially when they come to that third quarter. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they are like this makeup of core players is literally the greatest third quarter team of all time. Just the way that they can blow out games within a matter of minutes. Um, yeah, I think the sometimes the stage and the lights are too big for players, especially when this is their first time, and it sucks that your first time has to be against Golden
Against
State.
arguably the greatest big three ever assembled.
Yeah. Oh, I mean that. I mean Steve Kerr, who's done an incredible job as a coach. I mean he just doesn't get enough credit for what he's done, and obviously nobody likes playing in front of the Golden State fans. Nobody likes playing in front of Warriors fans. So, um, yeah, I think it's just going to be too much of an overwhelming series for the Celtics. I won't be surprised if this pushes to 7 and that they're able to take care of home court. But I see it going exactly how the way you said it is 2 at home, game 5 and game 6 go to the Golden State Warriors. I think they went on the road in Boston, and then that's all she wrote.
It's beautifully put. Jason Tatum's gonna be saying "damn," just like his boy Book.
Yeah. RJ. I love JT though. I mean, regardless of what happens, like I mentioned earlier, regardless of the outcome for the Celtics, I think this was a successful season for them in their
Oh,
program.
definitely.
Like they weren't supposed to be there. They were like 11th or 12th at one point in the Eastern Conference.
Below
Like
500.
yeah, no.
I will say though, like not the last thing before we go, but I think people are fucking weird for like shitting on Jason Tatum for texting Kobe. Cause I mean, that one, they're probably just fucking jealous that Jason Tatum has that number. But when you just look at one, how Jason Tatum plays the game, and two, he's talked about multiple times outside of like the birth of Deuce, his workout with Kobe is like the greatest day in his life. And being able to really pull up on that stage, game 7, this is probably the biggest game of his career since the game 7 against LeBron. And being able to be the guy in that game and being able to like emulate one of the greatest players to ever play the game and to have that like personal anecdote of him and to have all of that stuff, like I can't see why he didn't cry, man, because obviously outside of Steph Curry, I don't think anybody's been able to transcend the game in the modern era as much as Kobe Bryant. But I just had to say that. I think people are fucking weird for shitting on him for that. I think that's just disgusting. Because, I mean, come on now. Come on now. But.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It's it's a whole nother thing. But you know, like, do you mean like shitting on him because of the fact that he changed the game?
No, I think what I saw on Twitter was people were saying, oh, that's corny, that's whack kind of thing. I'm just like, are you
Well,
saying if you didn't have an inspiration to the level of Kobe Bryant, you wouldn't kind of dedicate shit like that? I don't know. But
I think. Well, I mean, it is gonna. It is what it is, right? Like, there's always going to be some sort of negative connotation to these things because, comparisons can be seen both negatively and positively. And listen, man, like Jason Tatum has that it factor that Kobe had.
100%.
that it factor, and he's got that Mamba mentality to go out there and perform when the lights are the brightest. So I mean, it is what it is, man. You got to pull inspiration from somewhere. Unfortunately, there's almost never a point where it's something that's new. It's always rewritten and rebranded and redone. But the most important thing is that you always show credit to where credit is due, and I think that's just what Jason Tatum is doing. Is he's paying credit to the guy that allowed him, to have that inspiration to come in and do his job like he is now. And so, anyways, people are corny for thinking that's corny. It is what it is, man. Everybody pulls in for inspiration from somewhere. And like you said, Kobe's transcended the game, like, the best since Michael, right? And so, yeah, I think people just like to nitpick, and I think a lot of those people who complain are also people who don't really know the game or who don't really follow the game like
Mm.
that or don't really love the game like that. They just like the drama.
High key though, a lot of the people I saw calling it corny were Bucks fans, man. It's just
Really?
like, motherfuckers just butt hurt, man.
They're just butthurt, and it's okay. Everybody gets butthurt. I mean, listen, the back and forth between what I saw between Toronto and Philly and who else I see Boston and Miami. It always happens, but at the end of the day, you gotta dap it up, even if you're a fan, and just tip your hat to the winning team.
100%, no doubt. But with that being said, this has been another episode of the Black Top Podcast. The NBA Finals start on Thursday. I know both of us are excited as a motherfucker. And, regardless of your team's not there or not, man, let's just enjoy. We're literally coming down from over 2,400 games to potentially either 4 or at most 7. And all of this is just to say next year Scotty Barnes is going to be an all-star according to Kendrick Perkins. With that being said,
Carry on.
100%. Reuben, bro, you have any last words to put on this?
Oh man, I'm good. I'm just I'm in the same boat as you. Let's enjoy the finals, man. I think this is gonna be some really good basketball. Like another season where we get a brand new winner. Let's just enjoy the Steph Curry and the Klay Thompson show. Let's enjoy the rise of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and then come back next year and talk some more ish against each other.
And make way for Scotty Barnes' first All-Star appearance.
I think Scotty Barnes will win League MVP, Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and most.
He'll be the first person to repeat as Rookie of the Year. With that being said, stay safe, stay blessed. We'll see y'all soon.
Deuce.